paullane.net. I'm sorry, excuse me, paullane.net, and I'll be glad to talk to you about the services I provide. Also, I am the author of the Caregiver's Handbook, a self-help love story. Guys, if you're interested in finding out a lot about being a caregiver, finding out about the ins and outs of caregiving and things that you can do to become a better caregiver, this book is an excellent resource. Good love story too. Also, all of you know that I am a spokesman or representative of CALMA, the Colorado Latino Mentors and Authors Association for, golly, I'm off today. The association, the Colorado Association Alliance. Oh my gosh, let me start over. Forgive me. Colorado Alliance for Latino Mentors and Authors. This is the anthology that's been like 4 years in the making. I was fortunate enough to submit a couple of poems and have them accepted, and so that was really exciting. That was a big thing for me. This is a collection of authors that many of them have been on the show in the last 5 years, and so it's really exciting to go through this and read from these brilliant minds and just have the opportunity to connect with them. And if you are looking for a mentor, or if you're considering writing a book, please reach out to CALMA, CALMA.org, and find out how you can be involved, whether as a mentor or as an author. I wrote, again, 2 poems, and the one poem I'm going to read is called I Didn't Give Thanks. I didn't give thanks when I sat down to eat, for all of my food, for my hands, for my feet. I didn't give thanks I can live where I please, for the sunsets I see and the cool summer breeze. I didn't give thanks when I laughed, when I cried, for the sunsets and mountains, and for clouds in the sky. And I didn't give thanks for having a home, a place where I'm safe and never alone. Then one day a wise friend explained this to me: your life will be best when you live thankfully. His words were so simple, so kind, and so nice. I felt utter shock for such awesome advice. I've changed how I think, how I feel, how I see, how the whole universe is connected to me. So I'll share this old wisdom from down in the ranks. If you want to be happy, just try giving thanks. You guys know, if you watch the show, you know that I talk about gratitude on every show. We talk about as much gratitude as much as we can. I finish every day with gratitude in my life, and that's what I encourage you to do. Enjoy life. You know, success doesn't bring happiness. Happiness brings success, and I believe in that. Today, guys, I got to tell you, this is going to be a show worth watching and watching again, and a book that's worth reading. And a book that's worth reading, I mean, with a loved one. This book is, I read a book out loud to my wife, Dee, and she laughed. We both cried. We both, I mean, there's parts of this book that just had me fuming mad at the way things are in this world. But Sharman Smith wrote this book, Taming the Tita. And when I got it, I was kind of reluctant. I don't know if reluctance is the word, but I was just a little bit. I thought, oh, okay, here's another book, and you know, I thought maybe it's going to be good, maybe it's not. And I started reading it, and I'm telling you, it's an easy read. It's a fun read. It's entertaining. It's compelling. It has all of the elements of a very, very good best-selling book. I mean it. I'm surprised that you weren't on the 2016 ballot. Now, here's the interesting thing of all this. Sharman Smith wrote this book in 2014. Sharman, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate you.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you. By the way, I met Sharman through TikTok, if you can believe it. I've had a couple of different guests from TikTok on the show over the past couple of years, and it's just been a great resource for really intelligent and experienced and knowledgeable people. And so I encourage you to get on TikTok and find out more about your society, because the real truth is being told there. Would you agree?
I mean, it really is. And I honestly want to thank Donald Trump for complaining about TikTok so much during the 2020 election. If he hadn't have hated it so much, I never would have downloaded it, and I absolutely love it.
Wow.
It is the greatest thing ever. Yeah. Everybody should TikTok. I look forward to what pops up on my For You page.
Oh, yes.
Because there were so many things I just didn't know I needed to know, and I really enjoy it.
Oh, yeah. I tell you, I've learned so much about my native culture. I've learned a lot about Latino Hispanic culture, which is very unique in the Southwest. I've learned so much about feminism. I've learned so much about Oh, by the way, I just loved how in the book you talked about your son and he was a proud feminist. There's so many things in this book we're going to talk about today, but yeah, I mean, TikTok has really opened a lot of people's eyes. A lot of people are coming to the realization that Project 2025 is real. There are things going on in our society, the things that went on last week with SCOTUS, the Supreme Court, things that are going on at the legislative levels, things that are going on at the Heritage Foundation. The list goes on and on and on. And guys, the best way to have power is to be knowledgeable. And Charmin and me, we kind of crossed paths throughout the past couple of years, and one day she put a thing and said, "I have a book," and I thought, "Oh, wow, great! Here's a great opportunity." And so we kind of connected, and next thing I know, I'm holding your book.
I know. Isn't social media amazing?
It is. It really is. I'm going to hold this up here so the camera can get a good shot of it. Charmin, if someone wants to get your book, where do they need to go?
You can go anywhere books are sold online. So you can go to Walmart or Target or Books A Million or Amazon and just type in Taming the Tida, T-I-D-A, and it will pop up and give you an opportunity to purchase it, and they'll have it printed and ship it straight to you.
Oh, it's a POD.
It's also available on Kindle if you have Kindle. There's an ebook version.
Oh, there is. Okay, great. I would love to see this book in an audio book. My wife says, "I love it when you read to me. I love this book, because there's so much emotion and passion in the book that you read that you need to verbalize to get out."
Yes.
Let's talk about your name before we get on. Charmin. In the book.
Charmin.
Yes, the protagonist's name is Charmin in the book. And,
yes. Well, it's the perfect name for a political candidate to clean this mess up.
I love that.
Right. I'm named after toilet paper, only with an S, because I'm smarter and stronger. I smell better than the TP, and I would completely clean up DC.
Oh man, yes. The ideas that you that you shared throughout the book, I mean, they were, I have to say, profound.
Thank you.
Like I said, I love that you raised a feminist boy. I loved when you talk about spanking children. And I'm going to bounce around, so I'm a kind of a freelance guy. So you talk about your views on spanking children, and it's so interesting. You could see a kid who is spanked by watching the kids in the playground, and the ones who hit are the ones that get spanked.
Yes. And it was hard to live in a household where only the boy was being spanked and the girl wasn't.
Wow.
The logic that came from my ex-spouse was that we don't hit girls, but you need to beat boys.
Wow.
And it was a constant source of argument between the two of us. And it really, you could see a difference in the two children's behaviors as well. And it became a source of strife in our relationship because my opinion didn't matter.
Oh, yes. Yes. In my book, I have a chapter, it's called, "I've Learned That Most Men Are Asses." And
that sounds like the truth.
It's the absolute truth. I was forced into being a caregiver. I was never, my daughters tell me today that I was very progressive for my time. I was cooking and cleaning, and my brother-in-laws used to call me a good wife. I didn't care. But I still know that looking back, I fell way short of where I could be. Now when a young man asks me, give me some good advice, I'll tell him, cooking and cleaning are not solely a woman's job, and they're not even more than half. It's your job to do all of those things. And
there's nothing more attractive than a man doing dishes.
That's exactly right.
Folding clothes and putting them away, vacuuming, incredibly hot.
Wow.
Hot.
Did you hear that, Dee?
I want all the men to hear this. We like these things. Foreplay isn't just kissing and touching. It's sweeping and mopping.
I agree.
We want you to know these things. This is what turns women on. I can't help it. It's just the truth.
Yes, you're so right. It's so amazing how much cleaner a house can be when there's four hands cleaning. I've always been the kind of guy, maybe because of my military experience, that if the dishes are dirty, you walk over and wash the dishes,
Were you enlisted?
Yes, I was. A long time. 77 I joined, and I was out in 1980. So it's been quite a while. But yes, it was not a gender role to clean, to cook, to cook anything.
We all eat.
Yes.
We all eat. We all need a plate to be able to eat off of. If you dirtied it, you should clean it.
Yep.
it's not rocket science, but there are some people who think certain chores are beneath them, and only the people that they see as beneath them should be doing them.
Yep.
And it creates a hostility in the relationship that is not beneficial for your long-term happiness.
It is not. It's not reciprocal.
It's not. No.
Yeah.
And love is reciprocal.
It is.
And trust and respect are reciprocal. It's like an alternator and a battery, right? We need each other to work together. And when we work together properly, we actually create more energy. Right? I used a classic car to explain climate change because I think we can't make change until we get the gearheads involved. So I like to use analogies that I really think will grab the attention of mostly men, because I want men to listen.
You know, it's interesting how we tend to do that. We talk about it on the show quite a bit about how everything is male dominant. I mean, even if you look biblically, everything is I ran the good race, I fought the good fight, I missed the mark. Everything is male centered, and it's society tends to be the same way. And you have to, like you say, get to the gearheads, you know. And so it makes sense. It really is. It's such an interesting perspective. How did you come upon the idea for this book? You said you wrote it in a very short time.
Well, so it's a couple of different things, right? The book, I bled 300 pages in 2 weeks. When it came time to write the book, I just sat down and it poured out of me. And it was an intense 2 weeks. When I snapped out of it, St. Louis was burning because Michael Brown had been murdered, and Robin Williams had just committed suicide.
Wow.
And 2014, it was August when I, kind of snapped out of this 2-week trance. But the book started, the idea of the book started long before it was actually written. And it turned out to be kind of a joke. It was a writing prompt to enter into a college program I wanted to attend. And it spurred the idea that the only way a poor, regular person who isn't properly connected could ever become president would to be discovered through a reality TV show.
Yeah.
And the reality TV show, Who Wants to Be President, was instantly born. It became a joke for a while in my household after Obama was elected in 12, because I knew Hillary was coming, and the Republicans' bench was shallow, and they had nothing they could throw up against her, and this was the only way they could do it.
Wow. And the case is still
I never in a million years foresaw the events taking place after I wrote the book the way it did, because I published the book 6 months before Trump even announced his campaign.
Yeah.
So any similarities in the book to actual events, I think, just improved the readability.
Oh, man.
But it's not like it was planned. There's so much stuff that has happened that has played out in the world that I couldn't have anticipated in 2014, even a Taylor Swift song. I mean, it's a good book.
Oh, it is. It's so entertaining, and it's so, profoundly, there's so many good ideas. I in the beginning, when we were on the phone, I said, you need to be on that ticket. But, just for some context, in the book, Charmin is, and her husband, well, I want to go back and talk about that. I'm sorry. She met her husband, and her husband says, I want to be the president. Would you be the first lady? And she grins at him and says, I want to be the president. Would you be the first man? I loved it. It
was a perfect first date. I have to be honest with you. He was just, he was my first dude. I just adored him. He was perfection. And he's a Navy pilot, so he was totally arm candy. I could just kick him out on a stage, and he would put on that pilot smile,
a Blue Angel,
and entertain the entire crowd. Oh, he was just everything.
Like you said, chicks dig him.
Oh, yeah. He was going to be the hero for all short, fat, funny guys.
Yeah.
I had a great plan for him. He made it to the Super Bowl with his work, and he came home covered in scratches and bruises and told me he had skeletons in his closet and he didn't want to be a politician's spouse. So I had to kick him to the curb because he's got scandals. And it was obvious they were not the same ones that had been when we had first met. So I am not a fan of football and the Super Bowl. I'm glad Taylor Swift enjoyed her year, but I choose to avoid that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really not a
It's
big sports
sad.
guy at all. I just never.
Good. I think it's safer to stay away from it.
Yeah, I guess I found out at school that it really drove a lot of jocks, and the jocks tended to be jerks. And I mean, there was a lot of
That's
exceptions.
my phrase.
But, oh, really? Yeah.
Jocks are jerks and nerds are nice, and the next one's really gonna like me.
That's right. Yeah, I thought that was really well put, and so correct, and so, you know, it was just a great observation of things the way they are, and a kind of a sad commentary, you know, at a lot of times.
There's some hard truths in there, and I really feel like a good book makes you feel all the feels.
Yes.
It should make you mad. It should make you happy. It should make you cry. You should want to throw the book across the room at some point in time. And I feel like I delivered that with this story.
Absolutely.
And it spans 40 years, right? Mm-hmm. So I wrote the book in 14, but I talked about 24. Mm-hmm. And there's other things that happen throughout the book that may or may not happen, and you know, it just is. It's an entertaining read.
Very entertaining. Very. I mean, it didn't get boring at all. I mean, I would, you know, just sit down and I say, oh man, come on, let's read. And you know, we turn off the TV and we go over there and just sit down and it's so nice to be able to read a book and laugh together. My wife, you know, my spouse and I, and to, I mean, to ponder the. I mean, you know, you both, you know, in the book, you and your spouse both went to public school, and you had your kids go to public school. I'm a highlighter, so I drew all over your book.
The public school system is really important to our country. My dad was a company commander. He pushed recruits through boot camp.
Really?
And he retired out of Great Lakes in 1980. So I was raised in boot camp, and I heard the rantings of an alcoholic Vietnam vet a lot. And he would share pieces of history and knowledge that he knew from his teaching in the military, because you have to train people to be able to function within the military.
Yes.
And one of the things that I learned was that World War I and World War II almost destroyed our country, because when they drafted citizens, they drafted people who couldn't read.
Wow.
They couldn't write. They couldn't math. They couldn't do inventory. Ammunition and regulations are very complicated when people can't read or comprehend.
Certainly.
And you could become an officer immediately just by being able to read.
Wow.
So I believe our education system was designed after the end of World War II so that it could create an educated population, so that should we ever find ourselves in World War III, we will win easily. And what scares me right now about the threat to destroy the Department of Education is I think this guy's working with our enemy, and he knows he's got to make us stupid, because as long as we can read and write and ask questions, he's got a real fight on his hands.
Yep. I think that we are facing a real crisis. You know, I did a TikTok the other day, and I got like 36,000 views, and I talked about how this is going to backfire on SCOTUS. This decision to do what they did last week and to make immunity for the president, when you combine that with what they've done with women's rights, we saw what happened in the midterms. It was a bloodbath. I mean, I hate to use that term, but it was the Democrats wiped them out. And this is going to bring people to the polls, and it's going to inspire people to have their voice heard. And that's my prediction, and I hope for the best. And I'm really hoping that's what happens, because if Project 20, and I am going to mention this again and again on the show, Project 2025, if it's implemented, they say you could say goodbye to democracy, and I agree with them. This is bad. Our education system, they want a theocracy, and they want to have complete dominance. And the real thing about it is, it's not saying we're going to be inclusive, because they want to do away with inclusion. They want to do away with equity. They want to do away with diversity. And all three of those things apply to you and me. You as a female, me as a person of color.
Well, and it's what makes our country great.
And it's
right. Our country has only been around for 248 years. Mm-hmm. We are one of the 500 countries that celebrate independence from Britain.
Wow.
We are incredibly fortunate to have done it the way we did it, and we established democracy so that we could spread it all over the planet and help people escape the same people we escaped. But we didn't necessarily know how to break all the systems that they created, because starting a new country is very hard when you have to deal with the other countries that are already out there. And our founding fathers were incredibly intelligent, but they were also lesser royals who would never touch the crown, and they knew the rules and our enemies better than we do. A very underappreciated and under-discussed document is the Monroe Doctrine.
Yes.
And he was our third president, and he wrote that doctrine in such a way that it forced England to protect us from Russia. That document is designed to protect us just as much from Eastern Europe as Western Europe. Our founding fathers gave us a beautiful blueprint to protect ourselves from narcissists. Because if you look at the Bill of Rights, the original 10 items, what they have given us is the ability to be able to protect us from an enemy we don't understand. We talk about the Second Amendment because of one word, uninfringed. But nobody ever talks about the Third Amendment because we think of it as military and quarters. We don't think of it as housing. And the way the amendment is written, it doesn't call out military, it calls out warring parties. And I think any of these international investors who come to our country and buy up our homes and increase the prices of housing so that Americans cannot afford to live here qualifies as a warring party. And I'm pretty sure our founding fathers would take every one of those houses and redistribute them to homeless Americans.
I agree.
I'm sure of it.
I agree.
I'm absolutely sure George Washington would beat whoever's behind showed up here, take their property and give it to some American.
Yeah, and he never wanted to be a king either.
No.
Yeah.
No. They knew what it was like to be the subject of a king, and they didn't like it. And they set it up so they could escape, and so their children and their grandchildren could escape too. And it is not just our right, but it is our obligation to hold our elected officials accountable and make sure that we protect what our founding fathers provided for us. We have a very rare country. We have done things in a very unique way, and we are a leader for the world, which is why they are trying so hard to divide us, because if we come together, they can't ever beat us. And they want to conquer us because they want to go back to being in charge. I don't want to go back to somebody else being in charge. Women don't move backwards in lifestyle well, and I know what it was like to be a woman 100 years ago, and it's a no for me.
I appreciate
I'm
that.
not interested.
Yep. In the book you talk about religion, and you talk about, I love this, what you said about the Bible has become a thing of worship. It's become the idol. And when you said that, it was like, yep, I get that. I totally understand that, and it makes sense. It's become the center of people's lives, not the word of it, but the book itself. And you know, it's a misguided notion, in my opinion, because the thing is that the words that are in it are really what's supposed to be the message, not the book.
Well, it's been mistranslated and retranslated so many times, it's not even the original document.
Yep.
And one of the things I like best about TikTok is that they are recently introducing all of us to the Egyptian Bible,
Yes.
which is apparently the original document that King James used to translate to give us the new version.
That was 1,000 years.
TikTok is the most amazing thing ever. We're learning that there's 88 books. Right? We're learning about the Apocrypha. We're learning about the mistranslations. We get to learn fascinating things like King James was gay.
Yes.
And
yes.
there is an epiphany that I have had since writing the book, that really what we have seen play out throughout history is what's happening now. Right? The Catholics were always abusing children. They were blaming it on the gays. And the gays were blaming it on the witches back then. And they were burning the witches because they had to point the finger at somebody to take the heat off of them.
They weren't burning witches, they were burning women. I'm sorry, I didn't. I said
women are just smart, and it's just an excuse to take revenge out on somebody.
Yes.
King James wrote a book called Demonology, where he explains how he identified the witches to burn. And we're just continuing to point the finger at someone else to take the heat off of us. It's the same thing that's happening now. We have the Christians who are pretending to be godly while they are doing things they don't want God to know about. God sees everything. And they're blaming the gays for being the problem. And the gays have no interest. And they're just stuck in the middle because they're different.
Yep.
And they're weird. And because they're weird, it's easy to pick on them. And it makes me feel like still being the weird little kid on the playground.
Wow.
And it puts me in a position where I feel defensive of the people who are getting picked on. Because I know the way it gets played behind closed doors. And I know I see it. And it is, the gaslighting is designed to keep us quiet. It is designed to keep us afraid and scared of who's going to attack us. Because if we speak up and we speak out and we point out who the problems are, we have to deal with their flying monkeys, because they never run alone. And it's dangerous, and everybody knows it. And the last couple of years have really put some bad behavior on display in a way that has never happened throughout history. And we're talking about it all for the first time.
Yep.
And we're working on ways to identify the behavior, because grooming is so much more than just what one adult does to one child. It is so much more about how predators trick other adults into trusting them. They find ways to get themselves into powerful positions around children. They're coaches, they're doctors and judges and politicians and businessmen. You know,
And
they own
ministers.
beauty pageants and go behind closed doors when the girls are getting dressed.
Yes.
You know, they're everywhere.
And Sunday school
locker
teachers.
Locker room talk has been accepted as boys will be boys. And now it's being identified as being a source of the problem.
Wow.
You can pick out who the predators are because they project. And we never before had people who had studied these behaviors, identified them, labeled them, and taught others how to spot them. This is our first time in history. So we're at a very powerful precipice where we have an opportunity to actually educate our population and sort out the predators. And the predators are freaking out. They are grasping for power everywhere they can. They're pointing the finger at anyone other than them. And the noose just keeps getting tighter.
And yes, and thicker. Did you, I don't know if you've seen the latest about the testimony that's come out from the grand jury from, I believe, 2008, Jeffrey Epstein. There's some pretty salty stuff coming out about the former disgraced, twice impeached president, and it's not good.
Well, and I heard that there was an announcement that had come from the GOP that their members needed to prepare to defend pedophilia, and I am looking forward to see how they turn this one.
Yep.
I really think that all those stories, I didn't believe the stories that came out in 2020 because of something that had happened to me in 2019, where I had fallen for somebody who had similar stories. And believing their stories just ruined my whole life. And I have a lot of sympathy for anybody who did fall for those stories, because I do think there's more going on than we know or understand, but I don't for one second think they're running around telling everybody what it is.
No.
And I do think more is going to come out, and we need to prepare ourselves. And anybody who ever said they supported the death penalty for pedophiles needs to be ready to stand on it.
Yes, that's in the book. That is such a,
Yes.
and I think that I could see legislation being changed for that, and reasonably so. Also, the statute of limitations needs to be ended for pedophilia. It cannot be. It
should be for all sexual assault, not just what they consider qualifies as pedophilia.
It absolutely should.
Yeah. The state of Florida punishes you for pedophilia charges, and they will give you the death penalty if the child is under the age of 12.
Wow. But hey, yeah, what if she's 20?
A 13-year-old can take it and give birth to that baby and co-parent with her rapist, and if she can't, he'll get custody and she'll have to pay him child support.
That's bull.
That's what Florida is.
Where the rapist can
And
choose his mother.
anybody- Well, that's what's been going on throughout history.
Yep, it truly
Throughout
has.
history, Women only recently got the right to choose. Men could just go to a house and say, I want your daughter, and she could be bought and purchased or just taken. You know, even the Bible says that if a man assaults a girl, he has to pay the father, and then he has to marry her.
Right.
That girl don't want to marry her rapist.
No.
That girl never wanted to marry her rapist.
The girl's thoughts are never taken into account, and it drives me crazy when I read those those passages.
We're living in a unique time in history where for the first time we're all equal, we're all free, and we all get to work and pay taxes and choose who we want to be with. And if we don't like somebody because their behavior changed, because they lied to get close to us, we have the right to leave.
And now they're trying to ban no-fault divorce?
Because they don't want the women to leave anymore.
Right.
They don't want to change their behavior, and they are tired of these women leaving. It is unacceptable. They are the wives. Marriage is just legal prostitution. So they expect to be able to do whatever they want, whenever they want, and they don't really care if she enjoys it or not. She's so picky.
Yeah.
If you can't ever keep her happy, you gotta cook, you gotta clean, you gotta be nice. And she can still say no. They don't understand.
Nope.
Right? They don't understand why these women aren't as happy as their grandmothers were, and they never listened to their grandmother's complaints, and they didn't hold her while she cried. The granddaughters did.
Wow.
And the grandmothers told the granddaughters all kinds of things, and told us to be careful who we choose.
Wow.
Right? Because men have a habit of changing their opinion later on when you're not as young and you're not as pretty, and they just get rid of you and find another one. And you won't be as young and as pretty, and nobody else will want you. And now we're in a situation where the women have been able to leave, and they've been able to choose, and they choose to stay single. And there's an epidemic of loneliness amongst men because the men don't understand what the problem is, and they think we're nagging, so they don't listen to us.
Oh man.
Instead of doing some self-reflection and changing their behavior.
Yep. It's a matter of it's very hard to admit when you have flaws or when you have faults or when you are wrong, and that's another thing I observe in children. When you see a child who apologizes, you see that a parent who apologizes to the child.
Yes, you do.
And it is so critical. My oldest daughter just turned 40, and she and I have these, both of my daughters, but we have these very in-depth conversations about parenting, and it's so good that she's so open-minded and she raises her son in a way that he's going to respect women in his lifetime, and he's not going to look down on them or think that he can oppress them or objectify or subjugate them in any way. He is a responsible, loving, young feminist.
Yes.
And he's only young,
Well, there's a lot of power in it too,
Yes.
because all of us girls, right? We talk about the bear, why we choose the bear. But we would prefer to know that a man is going to step up and protect us.
Right.
And we want to know that there is a safe guy we can go to if there's a scary guy around. Right? We would much rather feel like we're protected in the community by the men that are near us. But it's so often that they see something happen and they just turn around and walk away. And and it is absolutely that safe guy that you knew, that you thought you trusted, that you thought would step up and help you, that didn't. That broke my heart the most.
That's the
biggest disappointment. Every girl I know feels the same way. She looked to some guy who she thought was going to help her, and he didn't, and that broke her more.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I'm ashamed of my gender. I mean it. I don't know what we've come to. It's just it's always been that way. It's not.
Well, I don't think it's always been that way all over the world. I think it has always been that way in Europe. I think it was very common in European countries to have a lack of respect towards women and the matriarchy.
Yeah.
I think a lot of other continents and other cultures respected women and held women in high regard.
Yes.
But I think they were killed.
Well, even
by men that did not respect them.
You know, Lewis and Clark had a rude awakening when they came here, and they came upon matriarchal societies, and there was a case, and I don't know the exact details, but there was a man they caught drunk, and they were whipping him in front of the whole brigade, you know. And this was a matriarchal society, and they said, we can't help you here. This is not a place where we do that kind of thing, you know. We don't shame people or brutalize people because they're flawed. We accept them and embrace them. We support them and encourage them. And it's time. I don't care what anyone says. I want a woman president. I've wanted one for many years. I want a woman leadership, because they don't have that ego. They don't have that frailty, that volatility. I mean, there's so many things that every war, every religion is all male dominated, and every one of them has no solution because they don't see the other side.
Well, the only solution is to kill the other side.
That
is the only solution. You cannot talk to them, you cannot argue them, you cannot convince them
Ouch.
to see the light. You must kill them. So what we're seeing now with the Republicans and the Democrats is the Republicans are sick of listening to the Democrats and their complaints, and they're ready to just kill them.
Yeah.
Right? So they were surprised in 2020 when the BLM protests popped up and Antifa showed up.
Yeah.
They forgot that the right wing can't destroy the left wing, because we're the same bird.
The same bird. The same.
You want to fight? I want to fight too.
Yep.
You want to fight for your country? I want to fight for my country too.
Yep.
You're an American? Me too.
Hey, yeah.
Let's go.
Yep.
And that really surprised a lot of people, and I think it was an important lesson for a lot of people to learn, because just because you're loud and you're mean doesn't mean you're gonna beat me. I'll let you run your mouth, but when I show up, you better bring your A game, because I brought mine too, and I've been listening to you run your mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's where we're at.
Absolutely.
We're at a stalemate, right? We're just waiting for one side to jump. Right? We got one side screaming, you don't know what's coming for you. You lock my president up and I'm gonna burn this down. And we got a bunch of other people just standing around waiting. We're just waiting.
Yep, we're veterans. We're veterans too. We all. I mean,
Yeah.
This is ridiculous to assume that this could even happen, and yet they're pushing it, and it's
Yeah.
you know, if the left lays down and sorry.
Yeah, and our enemies are laughing at us while they use our systems to divide us and destroy us.
Ain't it the truth?
And you know, there's this TikTok Gen X, Rise of the Red Dawn generation.
Oh.
Right. And that brought out a lot of different type of people. But I'm pretty sure Russia saw that original Red Dawn movie too,
Yep.
and that's why they're not going to invade the West Coast. They're not going to go to Washington. They're absolutely going to go to Florida. They're all over Florida, right? Russia has bought every piece of property here. They're the main people who do tourist births. They come here just to give birth to babies so they can give birth to an American.
Wow.
They came to Florida. They're not going to the West Coast. They came to the South for a reason, because the Confederacy is still very much alive here.
Yes.
And it's very easy to trick angry people into supporting the wrong side.
Very, very manipulated. Very easy to manipulate.
They're very smart. They know what they're doing.
Yes.
They're not stupid. Say whatever you want to say about Russia, but they ain't stupid.
Nope. They're definitely they know they're a useful idiot. Hey guys.
They like him a lot.
Yeah. If you're just joining us, you are watching KUHS The Stream, and this is the Weekend Boost. I am your host, Paul Lane, and today we're talking to Sharman Smith, the author of Taming the Tita. Now, I want to, before we forget, I want to talk about the Tita, and I love that the explanation of the Tita and what it means and how you came up with that name in the book, the character. And so let's talk about that.
Thank you, and it's the Tita.
Oh, Tita, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Tita is a different word in Hawaiian, but they're similar. So the Tita is not exactly a compliment. It's not exactly an insult. It really depends on who you are. And I use the taming because it's a lot like taming the shrew. Shakespeare proved that he could tame a shrew, but I'd like to think I proved that you don't tame a titta. A titta tames you. And it is a Hawaiian word for an aggressive female personality that will fight you.
Yes.
And the titta exists in every woman I ever met, everywhere I've ever been on this planet. It didn't matter race, religion, nationality, or fluidity of gender. That angry woman exists in all of us, and there is a time to let her loose, and it is now. We need the women.
Yes, we do.
We need to stop shaming the black women for their legitimate anger and natural personality state. It exists within every woman, and the angry woman needs to stop shaming each other. We need to let each other loose. We need to have each other's back. We need to stand up for each other. And it is now or it is never.
Yep.
I look at the pictures of Iranian women in the 70s, and I'm not going back to the way things were in the 70s. I'm only moving forward. And anybody who wants to drag me to some situation where I can't even drive a car to get away, it's not for me. I don't want that. And I don't want that for any woman I know.
Yes.
And I worry about the women who are saying, why did we choose to work? Let's go back to the way it was. They don't understand how it was. They're not paying attention. They think they're all going to get some rich man that's going to prop them up in a lifestyle they want to become accustomed to, and that's really 1% of the population. The rest of us are going to be suffering in abject poverty, and no woman was going to want to put up with that. No American woman.
No.
No, especially not one that was born from the 70s forward. Especially if you got to live through the 90s.
Yes.
There's no way.
Yep. Times are changing, and it's time for that change. It really is. There were so many things that you wrote in the book that I had to highlight. And how dare you stand there and hold your Bible written by Romans who are infamous for being pedophiles and let them tell us how to behave and follow their rules on religion. Boom! It's like, yes, the reality, the honesty that you put in this book it's profound. I mean, I know that it may make some people, shrug and their hair curl, but the fact is that it's not a lie. It's a true statement.
It is a true statement, and I wrote it from the depths of my heart, and I really, I'm really incredibly proud of this book. I think that it is timeless. I think it has a great opportunity right now to give our leaders some perspective and help shape the way we really talk to people. Because there are a lot of conversations that we don't know how to have, and it is because of the way pedophilia was highlighted and brought about in 2020. We have a nation full of silent sufferers. We are the silent majority. 1 in 3 women, 1 in 6 men. Nobody really knows what the statistics of childhood sexual abuse are because it's the most underreported crime in history. And we have people all over who are starting to talk and starting to tell their stories and starting to share the pain that they have suffered with in silence. And we have to find ways to facilitate these conversations. You don't have to be like the Facebook sister and lean into every conversation, but don't lean back in repulsive shame and fear, because the message you are sending to that survivor who is sharing their truth with you is that we read your body language, and as soon as you get disgusted by us, it shames us in a way that it's very dark, and that shame cycle is hard to break. And we need to make it easier for more people to talk and to share their stories. And we need to revoke the statute of limitations so that people can get justice. These are crimes.
Yes, they are.
And it was fun. A couple of years ago, one of the Fox hosts decided she was going to break down the cost of what a pedophile costs our community and our society, because they damage that child who grows up who lacks the ability to be normal and to be functionable and to be successful and profitable in our society. So they deny our country the benefit of the taxes, the benefit from their work, and they create a drain on our community because we have to provide them with more resources, and they have more illnesses. And the pedophiles are costing us astronomically, and we're not actually calculating it. One pedophile creates on average 250 victims before they're caught. And we have to get to the point where we know how to identify the inappropriate behavior and stop it immediately. Where I live in Jacksonville, we had a story come up out of one of our schools because one of the teachers was having complaints made on him since 2008. And he was finally arrested. And when he was finally arrested, they caught 4 other teachers at the same time.
Oh.
And we get into this habit where we make excuses for that guy. That's just the way that guy is. Oh, that's just what he does. That's just what he says. Oh, that's just the way it is. And that's not just the way it is. It's not okay. That might have been okay 30 years ago when we didn't know better, but we know better now.
We don't buy that locker room talk anymore.
No, and we don't want people doing that to our kids.
No.
And we don't want them, Simone Biles, what a beautiful story of a survivor. And, when she says, as great as I am, imagine how great I'd be if he'd never done that to me.
Gee.
And there's so much power in that. And it's not just women. We're dealing with Ohio State wrestlers who have the same problems. If big, tough wrestler men can be victims too, it can happen to any one of us.
And here we have Jim Jordan. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I support the death penalty for pedophiles and the people who create and protect them, right? The idea that you can protect. You're perpetuating a cycle, and we deserve to break the cycle of abuse because our country has so much potential. The poor people in our country have so much knowledge and untapped potential, and we are limiting the whole future of our world and society because we got a few people that can't keep their hands to themselves.
Yes.
And it's such a shame. We deserve so much better. We're missing out on so many beautiful things because we're focused on dirty stuff.
I gotta say that your perspectives were so easy to receive and accept and to communicate with and to really to chew on. I mean it. When I would read something, when you talked about choice, oh man, I highlighted this. Do you mind if I read just a little bit?
Yes, please.
My mother used to tell me that the biggest mistake she ever made in her life was not aborting me when she had the chance. She knew there was something wrong with me, some reason why she couldn't fix me with her coat hanger when she had fixed other babies before me. As an adult, I believe that every child deserves parents. Not every parent deserves a child. Every child should be loved and wanted, protected and provided for. If you, as a potential parent, know that you cannot or will not do these things, I certainly won't force you to bring that child into this world. Who cannot accept and receive that? I'm gonna continue. You need to make your own choice and make it within 20 weeks of gestation. It's time enough to know if you can be a parent. After that, you need to women up and either decide to be a parent, find an adoptive parent, or let the state find parents. Once that baby or fetus or parasite, or whatever you want to call it, inside of you can live on its own, then it deserves to live. Duh! I mean, that is... How?
Well, and when I wrote this, I didn't know that there was going to be accusations that women were just terminating pregnancies right before birth, just out of spite. I didn't even know that was going to be an accusation, and I don't think there are any women out there doing it. I think the only late-term abortions that are taking place are because of health issues.
Yes.
And because the baby isn't viable. This world is for breathers. If you cannot develop to the point that God can breathe life into you, like Genesis, the first book of the Bible for anybody who hasn't read it, if you can't get to the point where you can breathe, you're never going to be sustainable in this world. And an unbreathable baby shouldn't be able to take out a mother who has the ability to create another one.
Absolutely.
They're not terminating that pregnancy out of spite because they're angry and they don't want to have a baby.
Yes.
They're trying to save their mental health so they can gather their strength to do it again. Because babies.
Yes.
I don't think the men who make these accusations understand how offensive it is that they think that women are just killing babies for fun, even after they're born. You can have a post-birth abortion, which is just the dumbest thing I ever heard.
Ridiculous.
Like they want to re-implant ectopic pregnancies. They don't understand what they're talking about. And women are dying left and right. And I realized pro-life is a legal loophole to murder your wife. We lived in a society for centuries where there was no health care, and women died in childbirth all the time, and 80-year-old men got to marry 12-year-old girls, and it was perfectly okay.
Wow.
And that's what they want to take us back to. And I don't want to go back to that.
Nope,
I don't want anybody to go back to that.
No.
And I think those 80-year-old men should no longer be able to be around 12-year-old girls, especially if they're interested in doing anything like that.
Yes.
And we have to be willing to have this conversation. Yes, this is the way the world was for the last 2,000 years. But just because it's the way it's always been done doesn't mean it's the way it always has to be done.
Absolutely.
We can be smarter. We can be better. You know, I've even tried to explain the female body as a manufacturing unit. But America sent all their manufacturing jobs overseas at NAFTA, and the men don't get it. They don't get it.
Ain't that the truth? Oh man, that was good. Yeah, I just think that it's so easy to receive and again accept these things because they're not left or right. They're very commonsensical.
Well, I like to say I'm too conservative for my liberal friends and too liberal for my conservative friends. I'm somewhere in the middle and nobody is pitching to me. So I got my dodgeball because I'm Gen X and I started throwing it in the game.
And you're playing well. I think this book is a collection of thoughts that really, at the very least, every presidential candidate should have some kind of exposure to these thoughts.
There's some really good ideas that I put in that book when I wrote it in 14, almost a decade ago now. And I have seen a lot of things come to pass since then. There's really some treats hidden in there.
Yes, there are.
And it makes me really proud to hear how well it reads a decade later. Because when I first published the book and started marketing it, it was before Donald Trump, and I don't think anybody could really grasp the idea of how much our world has or would change. It was different to present these thoughts a decade ago, and now I think they're timely, and I think this is what we need, and I think we need some new conversation pieces.
Yes,
and
we do.
I think it's just waiting to be found. I think that this is. I think our country is on the right path. I always think we're on the right path. We're exactly where we need to be to get to where we need to go. And we have to have some growing pains, right? It's not going to be easy. We're not taking the wide path that everybody goes on. We're on a narrow path, and we're forging the way for the rest of the world. And there's going to be problems, but we're learning, and we're evolving, and we're getting better. And if we don't fix it here, there's going to be a whole big problem everywhere else nobody wants to deal with.
Yes, and it will be generational. It won't be a short-term problem. It's going to be. Listen to this, guys. Listen to this. I got to share this. Let me see. Okay, honestly, we need to figure out better birth control methods for men than a condom. It's easier to unload a weapon than it is to clean a wound. Personally, I'd appreciate it very much if the scientists could get that worked out before my son becomes a teenager. He's a little flirt and he doesn't have type he likes all girls equally and brags about being a feminist. I love this part. I see the appreciation in these young ladies' eyes when they realize he's on their side and doesn't consider them items to be possessed. I'm looking forward to grandchildren, but in a more controlled environment. Boys need to see girls as human beings, as equals, and not objects, man.
You know what else I did right, and it made me really proud when it happened? I taught my son the importance of investing. When I was in middle school, I was an ugly duckling, and the boys were mean to me. And I had a magical glow up the summer between junior high and high school. And when I started high school, they didn't even know who I was.
Wow.
And they were so much nicer to me.
Wow.
It was ridiculous how much nicer the boys were to me once I was pretty. So I taught him to be nice to all the girls, even the ugly girls, because you don't know who's going to have a glow up, and you don't want to disqualify yourself from the greatest thing you ever saw just because you were a jerk at 12. And when he got into high school, there was other boys that said something to him. They're like, "Why are you being nice to that girl? She's not even hot." And he explained investing to them, and they became nicer too. And I really feel like if we just share the knowledge at the right time with the right person, the boys need a role model.
Yeah.
They'll pick anyone that sounds good.
Yep. Yep. If you're kind to them, if you appeal to them, and if you make sense, they're going to follow you.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding, Charmin. There's just page after page after page. You know, whenever you were talking about Jimmy Kimmel, and I remember that. We were reading that, and my wife and I were talking about how Jimmy Kimmel had this thing about these kids for Halloween, and their parents played a prank on them and said that they had taken their candy. And you could see the different reaction in the kids based on the way that they were parented. Some kids would go almost violent or literally violent and smack their kids and yell and shout and cuss. And the other kids that were raised by the loving, kind parents would say, "It's okay, Mom. It's okay, Dad. I know that you did. You know, I know you'll save some for me next time." But there was such. I remember watching that and thinking, what a difference in parenting. And when you brought that up, it was like, oh man, I remember so well. So,
yeah. No, our kids are really examples of us, and they behave how they see us behave. And when things get chaotic at home, things get chaotic with kids. And you know, there's a lot that goes on at school. Our teachers don't get enough appreciation for the things they see and have to try to manage.
Nope.
And being a public school kid that came from a bad home, I feel like I should apologize to all of my teachers.
Yeah.
I know they had their hands full. I remember what I was like as an angry teenager, for sure.
I got to read this part because I think it's really profound too. Congress is getting a nice reward for not participating. They get a healthy salary at retirement package after one term that a military person doesn't even get after 40 years. With this as an example, it's no wonder our adults would only know what right looked like after it reached out and touched them. Boom.
I saw something that there is a rumor going around that Biden's going to use his executive authority to establish term limits, and he's going to take away the retirement package for former elected officials.
Yes.
And I think that's going to be very interesting to see how that works out.
Yep, that's all about
Because honestly, one of the things that's appealing about getting into office is the retirement package.
Oh, yeah, the health
because you can keep that salary and your medical benefits for the rest of your life.
Yep.
For what, 2, 4 years, 6 years? What?
Yep.
The military don't get that.
No.
They don't get that good of a deal.
You know, I got to share this with you. When Ted Kennedy got his brain tumor, it was called a glioblastoma. My wife was suffering with her glioblastoma at the same time. And I chaptered my title, Brain Cancer, the Stepchild of All Cancers. And then I prefaced it by saying, you know, can you imagine if I had the health care that Ted Kennedy had? But he still died. But still, we should be entitled to some health care. I mean, as a retired senior citizen, I shouldn't have to pay another $176 of my income. I'm taxed out there. But I shouldn't have to pay more money just to get health care. And yet here I am.
I personally believe that the way the system was set up decades ago made sense decades ago. But I think we have better creative financing skills now. And I personally believe that every American citizen should receive Medicare based on the fact that they pay taxes, period. I think we should have to pay, you know, maybe it's not 1.85%, maybe it's 2%, but we remove the caps on income so that we get the 2% of the billionaires' full income to fund the system. And
Oh.
every American gets cradle to grave health care because we
man.
need them to stay alive as
Oh.
long as possible to pay taxes.
Yes. If we could
And
get
if they're
some.
healthy, happy people are more productive.
Yes, they are.
They do more work, they make more money, they pay more taxes. There is a dot that doesn't get connected. There is a lack of energy flow between the battery and the alternator.
Oh.
With some of our politicians. They want to trap people and keep them poor and work them for free. There's a disconnect. The math isn't mathing.
There absolutely is. Charmin, we've come to the end of our hour. I could talk to you for another 5 hours. I mean, this book is so, I mean it, guys, you have got to get your hands on this book. Every presidential candidate needs to read this book. I don't care if you're left, I don't care if you're right. I am telling you, this book is an eye-opener. It's a head-scratcher. It will make you laugh, and I promise you, it will make you cry. And like you said, it will make you want to throw the book against the wall, but it is everything that I promise you it is. It's a book that I would recommend, and I got bits and pieces that I'm going to go back. I've highlighted through the book that I want to read with friends and family. Guys, you've been watching the Weekend Boost. I'm your host, Paul Lane, and this is KUHS The Stream. We have Mr. Paul Chavez, Mr. International, coming up, and he's going to entertain you for the next hour with deep cuts, wonderful music. Guys, stay tuned because KUHS always has something interesting, something worth hearing, and I hope that you've enjoyed today's show. We will see you in 2 weeks. Charmin, thank you so much. It's been an absolute joy to have you.
Beautiful.
See you on TikTok.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.